Hello, my name is James Alexander-Sinclair.
And I'm Joe Swift.
And this is...
What's it called?
It's a bad start, that one. This is the Scribehound Gardening Podcast.
I knew you'd remember it.
See,
there you go.
Somebody has to be on the ball. So basically, we are here to talk about all aspects of gardening and whatever comes into our tiny heads at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fresh spin, isn't it? We're sort of going a bit tangential with some subjects. We can bring anything in we want. There's a little bit of competition between the two of us, I'd say, Jimmy. But we're old friends. We're not going to let anything get between us here.
We're not going to punch each other this time. Or are we? We never really know.
No, but everyone thinks gardening's just sort of lovely. It's a lovely thing and we're all lovely people. But actually, there is a bit of an edge to it sometimes. And we're trying to expand that out a little bit.
But we are lovely, as are our fellow writers on Scribehound. Because Scribehound Gardening, if you're not subscribed to Scribehound Gardening yet, you should be. Because it's not just about us. There's also another 30-odd writers.
Not another 30. We make up 30. So
there
that's,
are 30.
That's 28, because 30 minus 2 is 28.
God, you're good at maths.
O-level B, I got maths, yeah.
Oh, I failed it 4 times.
But this is also interactive, because people can write in their questions, which we love. We love answering questions.
We love a question.
And if we read out their questions, they don't just get the kudos of that.
They do not.
They also can win a little green gnome.
An environmentally friendly little green gnome, if we read out your question. But there are rules involved in this. We don't do boring questions and we don't do dead plants.
Yeah.
Yeah? So if you've got an exciting question, send it in. If we read it out, you get a gnome. There's an email address, all right? gardening@scribehound.com.
Makes sense to me.
I have a gift for you, chaps.
It's a present.
What, are we playing Pass the Parcel?
How many layers is that going on? Okay, we've got to open this. What's that?
Well, it's in a nice red Arsenal colour.
It's Christmas.
So are we pretending it's Christmas?
I think so.
I should I open it?
Yeah,
I feel a bit...
No, you open it.
Really? Are you sure?
You open it and then...
It's been beautifully wrapped, actually.
Oh. This is it, is it?
This is it.
Whoa! This is the gnome.
This is the gnome. This is what people win if we read out their questions.
Show me, gimme.
Hang on a minute now.
No, I want to touch it.
I tell you what, that would take pride of place on.
Yeah, give me the gnome.
I mean, is it? I think it goes in the bathroom.
I think that's.
I think it goes in the
Look at
bathroom.
that. It's even got. It's a gnome with attitude. Look. Way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
With the shades on.
I think that's great. I'm going to send him some questions because I could do with a line of these.
You're not allowed to have cheating. I need to have another look now.
Oh, that's lovely.
Nice glossy. But there you go. Yeah, beard and no moustache.
But it's got shades.
Shades
as well.
Yeah.
So there we go. That's what you can win if you send in a question and we read it out.
Yeah. So if you've got one of these at home, people will know that you're a Scribehound legend.
They will. If that's it, that's what we're going to call them. Anybody who gets a question, they are called Scribehound legends.
Scribehound legends. Excellent. Right, I'm going to put him there.
Okay, so what I thought that we talk about, or what we thought we'd talk about today is
no, it's what you thought we'd talk about.
Well, it's not.
That's the truth, isn't it?
Somebody thought about it and put it in my mind. Is about what your garden says about you. You got a new garden.
Yeah.
About which we know quite a lot because you put quite a lot of it on social media. And we have to
sit Joe's Country Garden on YouTube.
Many hours of Joe's Country Garden. What does your garden say about you, Joe?
It says that I am hardworking,
right.
That I'm investing emotionally, that I'm in it for the long haul, I'm doing it the right way. And I guess every decision that you make in a garden, putting in a plant, putting in a tree, where a path goes, your colour schemes, I think that's really interesting because you're layering up your personality in your garden. Okay,
yes.
You know, any ornament that you might choose to put in.
Oh, that's a difficult one, though.
I know it's a very difficult one, but you know that's what people do. They buy something because they like it and they put it in their gardens. It might not be to our taste necessarily,
but that doesn't really matter. What
No.
I think is the really, really important thing, and the thing we have to hold on to while we're talking about this, is that it's your garden. You do what the hell you want with it, basically. We're not going to come around and go, oh, you shouldn't do that. If that makes you happy, then that's a good thing. We might not do it, but if you do it and that's what you like, then good for you.
It was really interesting, actually, because over the weekend we had some friends over, and they had seen the garden previously.
Yep.
And so I've been editing it, taking out some quite big stuff, okay? And they're like, oh, it's all opened out, and you've changed that over there, and the plantings are over there, and, how do you make your decisions? And I could never take a tree out or a large shrub out, is what this friend of mine said to me. And I said, but he's a really good cook. So I likened it to cookery. I said, look, you go to the fridge, okay? You got a nice bit of hake in there because he cooks fish really well.
Yeah.
You got a lovely bit of hake in there. You got some garlic there. You got some onions, okay, and then you got some herbs and everything, and then you've got a bit of pineapple. Well, just because it's in the fridge.
You don't have to
Just
put the
because
pineapple
it's in the fridge,
hake.
you don't have to put the pineapple in with the hake because it's going to ruin your meal. So that's how I feel about my garden. I've got everything looking great. And no, that is not. I've got this purple maple, bright red purple maple, and it's ruining. And people are like, you can't get rid of that because it's already there and it's a beautiful plant. It is a beautiful plant, but it's like the pineapple with the hake.
Yes, no, I could get that. And I have that. You must have it as well. You go and see a client. And what I say to them, you look at the garden the first time, trying to find out what they like, what they don't like. And you said, what do you like? What do you like that's already in this garden? And quite often they will say, well, that plant there at the back, it's quite big and it's been there a long time. Being quite big and being there a long time is not a good enough reason to keep it there, basically, because you're rejigging things and you're changing things.
No, but they feel a huge responsibility, something they've inherited and that's old and it's been there. And in some cases, they're absolutely right. But we are ruthless in our approach because we know where we're heading.
It's because we can see the future.
We can see into the future.
We can see into the future. Because I've done that. Because I guess, probably 10 years ahead of you.
Well, yeah, your garden does reflect your personality, I think, nicely. I mean, it's a beautiful garden. But you've also got a bit of a plant collecting thing going on. You'll buy something because it's a bit of an oddity, or you're really interested in that plant, and then you'll grow it rather than necessarily thinking, well, this goes with that, we go with that. I mean, it does obviously look beautiful.
Sometimes I'll kill it.
Well, we all do
by
that.
Mistake, and that sort of happens. But yes, you're right. So we're sort of 10 years ahead of you, and we've sort of got the architecture and we've got the structure of the garden right. You know where you go, you've got the walk round, you've got the pond, you've got all these bits and pieces. And there are plants that are inside. But it's not it's not really the way that I would design a garden for a client.
No, nor me.
Which is quite interesting, isn't it, really? Because we have one way that we know works, and we go with clients, and you think, okay, it's this sort of garden, it needs that sort of thing in it. Whereas at home, I'm sort of, I buy ones of things, which is what you're not supposed to do.
I tell everybody never to buy one.
But actually, buying ones is quite interesting. And you just suddenly have this thing, and it's just like an eye catcher that comes out of a group of other things. So I quite often do ones, and the other reason you do ones is you can do three, but do them separately. So there's one at one end of the garden, one at the other end of the garden, one in the middle, which means you've got a sort of a connection.
No, I do
between
that.
them.
I do
So
that
sort of
quite a
works.
lot. But yeah, I have not worked on my garden how I would on anybody else's garden, because you're really working remotely. You're leaving drawings and you're leaving plant, and then you leave it for them to sort of then garden. But
Yeah.
the whole point of gardening something is it's deeper actually, and it's more regular. It's daily. You're looking at it constantly, so you can edit it. And I think you're always going to create a better garden for yourself in a way than potentially for a client because of that.
It could work both
Apart from
ways.
it's a lot of work.
There is a lot of work, but actually, I like the work. That's what's quite nice in that people think that us as gardeners, we spend all our days gardening, but we don't. A lot of it is spent sitting behind a desk or sitting in a car or talking to people rather than actually putting your hands in the ground and doing it. So I quite like Saturday comes along. Oh, great, I can go out there and do some weeding and do some gardening and actually grow some stuff and look after things. And it's a sort of it's an anchoring process, isn't it? Rather than the sort of creative drive that works for the rest of the time.
I'm getting to the stage in my life I would much rather be in my own garden than heading off anywhere else. And I'm at the moment, I'm so busy that I slightly resent work. I shouldn't say this because I'll probably lose a lot of work, but I do. Oh, I have to go. Like tonight, I'm driving up to Stockport to do some filming and something. I just want to be in my own garden and develop that because there's so much to do there. And is that a sign of age or is it just I don't know what it is.
I think it's just a sign of you're happy in your own garden.
It's,
you've sort of come home and it's the right place.
And
to
I've
be.
got to manipulate time, going over the next few years where I spend more time at home, especially spring and summer, which is when we're all really busy zooming around. Then
exactly,
that's the problem.
which we shouldn't do.
But okay, enough about us.
Yeah, well,
I never thought I'd ever say that. No, but also, what's interesting here is other people's gardens and what other people's gardens say about them. Okay, so
what would you say?
I mean, it's a Shameless garden, isn't there? Where you just got the sofa.
Well, I rather like those. I think that's quite. But actually, that's also very sort of a la mode in that you have an outdoor sitting area and it's sort of wild and natural there.
Just because they chuck the sofa out.
Because the sofa's out there, it's something to something's there to go and sit on and be, or fridges or washing machines, all those that kind of thing. It is to a certain extent, even if it's a pile of fridges, it's doing a habitat for some creature. Maybe it's just rats. I don't know. But okay, so if you see a garden like that, you think maybe slight wasted potential, or do you just think they quite honestly don't care? They're not gardeners. Not everybody is a gardener.
You just I do sort of you do imagine the people behind those gardens, and you do. Is it rude to call people lazy these days? Is that politically incorrect to call someone a lazy sod?
I think you can, but I don't think it's fair in this because maybe they just don't know and they haven't discovered gardening yet. I think that
or they need somewhere to put the old fridges. It's a storage space.
Yeah, where else are you going to put it? There's no room for them inside.
Well, you can ring up the council. They do a heavy. They'll
come
take
and do it, but
they'll take it away.
It'll cost you. You have to pay for that.
Yeah,
it's a sort of extra
always.
thing. But some people don't get gardens, and that's fine. It means I like to think of them as people who haven't discovered the joys of gardening yet. Many people never will. I mean, it took me a long time to discover the joys of gardening. Yeah. The first garden we had this weird flat, which basically for a lot of the time was underwater for some reason or other. It's sort of funny, but there was a yard at the back that all the time I lived there had scaffolding in it and a leaking drain.
Right, yeah.
And that was the garden. Yeah. So we didn't get to use it that much.
It might have been a Hampton Court conceptual garden.
It could possibly have been that as an option. I think it had an engine in it. Yes, it has an engine. It has an old car engine in it that we put in there, but couldn't get out again because it was too heavy. And I've got this extraordinary picture of three of us trying to use a piece of rope and some scaffolding to lift an engine
to get it out, to chuck it in your neighbour's garden,
just to put it somewhere. So
okay. So those are they're gardens that no one really cares about, but then there are gardens where people really care. We're going to be critical now. I'm going to be critical. So very very sterile gardens where they might have had a designer in. Or they might have had a landscaping company some landscaping companies think they're designers, but they love hard landscaping, right? So they've paved it all, they've got decking there, there's maybe a couple of plants, but it's a very sterile, but they love it because it's just somewhere they can use, but actually someone's forgotten all the plants or ripped out all the plants and gone very hard landscape. That annoys me. It winds me up because it's very low maintenance. Yeah, you just literally hoover it or something. Yeah. But gardens these days should be somewhere for plants and to connect with wildlife. So I do get agitated when I see something.
I know exactly the sort of garden you mean, and it's the idea of it's another room. Yeah. But in a different way. John Brooks wrote about this, the outdoor room and stuff in the 1970s, and it's one of these sort of seminal works that all garden designers read. But his room was decorated with plants, whereas now people think of it as an outdoor room. Okay, it's somewhere to go and sit. So at its worst, it will have an artificial lawn. Yeah. It will have maybe a sort of sitting area which cooks quietly, and then decking, and there's possibly a raised bed along the edge, but it's never going to be wide enough. It's like two railway sleepers or something on there.
And it hasn't got any plants in it.
And it's got a few plants in it, but nothing really that's very exciting. But it serves its purpose.
But someone spent a lot of money on that as
well.
They probably had it designed. It might be designed, not necessarily by a very good garden designer, because a good garden designer will try and persuade them to have plants, but some clients are, oh, I'm no good with plants, I'm just going to kill everything, so I just want loads of hard landscaping and paving, and there might be a water feature, and there might be some LED lights going on in there. It's a bit footballers' wivesy. It's sort of it's a bit show-offy.
It's a party room.
It's a party room, and it tends to be sort of younger people who have got some cash, right? I think that's, I'm not mentioning my nephew or anything, but I designed his garden and he installed it but forgot to put the plants in. And I was like, no, that's why that border was so wide, because you are actually going. And he's like, yeah, but I just thought I'd pave right up to the fence because then I don't have to put any plants in, and my son could kick a football against the fence and all that sort of stuff.
Which is true, and maybe the plants come later. But some people are scared of plants.
They are.
So how do you stop people being scared of plants? What's the one plant that you would give them? Can we think of, say, 3 plants that nobody should ever be scared of because they'll pretty much look after themselves?
Yeah.
Go on then.
Okay, I think you'd have to go for one grass, and I'm not talking about growing. I wouldn't not growing in pots, because the minute you put stuff in pots, they think, oh well,
work.
You got to water them, and watering is a regular thing. So I would go for a grass of some description. Sessilaria autumnalis. Are we going a bit horticultural here?
I know we are a bit. We're just going to go briefly into.
Okay, I'm going to go for one grass because
Sessilaria.
Because it's evergreen. It'll grow in sun or shade. It'll grow in moist soil. It'll grow in dry soil, and I've just put it in a garden, and the clients haven't watered it, and some stuff's keeled over, but the Sessilaria, I got a photo of yesterday and it's looking fantastic.
But that's fine. Okay, well, I'm going to chuck in a sarcococca because it's like evergreen, glossy shrubs, smells in the winter, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to be scared of that. It just sort of does it. Again, you have to water it a bit and plant it properly.
To get it going. Hardy geraniums.
And some hardy geraniums. There you go. That's a start, isn't it?
That's a start.
So that's it. Now we're going to go away from the horticulture and go back to the
turning into like Gardeners World podcast, James.
We can do
people actually might. We don't want people to learn anything here.
Heaven
forbid.
Our purpose is not to educate anybody. In fact, it's actually the last thing we want to do.
What other style of gardens? Okay, so we've talked about our gardens. We've talked about sort of the Shameless gardens.
Yeah,
we've talked about the footballers' wives style sort of flash hard landscapey gardens. But there's some, there's so many different types of gardens, I guess, out there.
There's traditional, there's modern, I don't know how you divide them. I guess basically that there's the gardens that we were brought up in.
Yeah.
Which I think were probably quite what you consider to be old-fashioned at that point. My parents were keen gardeners. My father grew vegetables, all that. It was kitchen gardens. We've spoken about vegetable gardens. Yeah. Maybe we'll do that another day. But it's
what it says about you. That's the point. That's the point of this, is what it says about you.
Yes.
So, thinking of, like we had, when we grew up in the 70s, our next door neighbour took over the front garden, and he was a sculptor, and he was on, there was a lot of wacky-backy going out, I'm telling you. I don't know what he was taking, but he turned his front garden into this, he had light bulbs, copper tubes. It was all Mondrian. He painted everything blue, yellow, or red. It was Mondrian-esque. And this
Hang on, where did light bulbs come into this?
No, he just created the whole sculpture in his front garden, and I thought that's what everyone sort of did, And it was sort of Hampstead in the 1970s, and it was bedsit land, and it was really quite interesting. And he was just using this outdoor space to do his own thing completely.
That's nice. That's what you should be able to do there in a garden, isn't it? Really. And
but these days people would laugh at him, I think.
But that's okay. You can cope with that, but they would also stop and they would think and they would talk about it.
Yeah.
Maybe you're trying to make a garden that people talk about. Other people are just trying to make a garden that's just for them, keeps it quiet. Again, you see, my parents' garden, quite old-fashioned, nicely planted, but straight edges and all of that kind of stuff.
Can you tell if someone's gardened it themselves or they've got someone in to do their garden?
That's a really interesting thing. So what is the point and the purpose of a garden designer? I see our purpose is to help you make a garden, maybe to stop you making mistakes, all of that kind of thing. But yes, you can look at some people say, oh, no, I wouldn't have a garden designer in. I remember I met somebody years and years and years ago when I just started becoming a garden designer. And this chap came up to me and we were talking at some drinks party or something. And he was much older than me. And he said, what do you do? And I said, I design gardens. And he said, oh, Does anybody ever use that? Is there any purpose behind this? Because it was like an alien concept, the idea of actually designing gardens. Nowadays, I think that people are much more in tune with the idea of garden design. But there's always going to be people who would say, no, I won't have a garden designer on my premises. I want to do it myself. It's an expression, like you said, an expression of my character, not of a designer's character.
Yeah.
Do you think it sort of disappears if you bring a designer in, and then you've got a Joe Swift garden, or you've got a Tom
If you're
Stewart
lucky.
Smith garden? If you're lucky,
If you're lucky.
you got one of them.
But a good designer draws the personality out of their client and creates something that they're comfortable in and that they, that works with them, for them, and that is sort of our job.
Yeah,
really.
the garden is the result of a conversation between the designer and the client, and getting on with people, because that's about what it is. You can't work for somebody who you don't like or you can't get on with.
Oh,
no, you really shouldn't do that. That's a big mistake.
I've learned that the hard way. I'll be honest with you. I've learned that the hard way.
You need to have this sort of, you need to have this connection.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be mystical. It just has to be right. I understand
Well,
what you want.
Trust.
I can help
There's a
you.
lot of trust as well, because people who can't design their own gardens or can't, don't see themselves as gardeners are putting a lot of trust. They have to trust you because that's why they've got you in the first place. And if they don't trust you, and sometimes you do get a client who doesn't quite trust what you're going to do, that's when the relationship slightly breaks down.
Absolutely.
And that's when they end up with a diluted garden, because they start throwing their thoughts in halfway through the design process, and so does their son and their cousin and their friend round the corner, and they all start looking at this drawing and the whole thing, and then they all start, and that's when it becomes confused and diluted, and you never get as good a design or garden at the end of it.
I think that's very interesting. It's just that whole idea of trusting. You need to trust your instincts if it's your garden. Trust your garden designer if you're actually working together with somebody. And the other thing to remember is that it's basically mostly about plants. And if you have to replace them, you have to replace them. They are not puppies. You can chuck them out and start all over
and
again.
you can buy plastic plants, of course, if you want. I mean, they're lovely.
We wouldn't do that.
They look great.
We wouldn't do that because we don't do that sort of thing. Even our gnomes are made of wood rather than plastic. Okay, we got some questions, I think probably is what we'll do now. We may come back to this subject because it's a big subject, but we're going to come back from questions because some people have sent us stuff which we haven't seen yet. We're doing this proper gardener's question time thing. This is the first time.
They all want one of these.
They all want
Oh, hang on.
a gnome.
These people, if we read out their questions, are actually going to get one of these.
They're going to get a gnome.
James, can I just remind you that this one with the rather rude hand gesture is my one.
Oh, that's just for you?
Just for me. But all the people who write in and win one of these, the legends.
They get.
What are we calling them?
No, we're
Scribehound legends.
Yes, Scribehound legends.
Scribehound legends. Yep. They get one with the old.
Oh, with the old hearty
Bale,
thing.
the Gareth Bale.
The Gareth Bale heart thing. All right. Well, that seems much
we
better.
don't
So
want to
this one is
upset
just
them.
for you. This is the stuff for you, Joe.
There's only one of
Joe
those.
Gnome. If you ask a really bad question and you upset us, then you might get one of those.
You might get one of those.
Okay, so we've got these questions sent in. This is I'm going to read out mine first. You ready?
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Okay, this is Sally from Scunthorpe. I'm on a mission to fill my entire garden with plants bought solely from Sainsbury's. Other supermarkets will do as well, I think, probably. Do you think this is feasible? Will they actually survive? Yeah, it's not about where you get them from. It's how you treat them when you get them home, isn't it?
Yeah, hang on. But no, for a start, she's very specifically saying Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
So you can't start saying, it's not the BBC. We don't have to say other supermarkets are available,
Okay,
James.
I think it's because of the S. It's Sally from Scunthorpe and Sainsbury's.
Exactly, that makes it simple.
Okay, so will they survive?
Well, the thing. Okay, so the thing about Sainsbury's and other supermarkets, is it's a seasonal thing. Okay, a lot of them will have bedding out. Okay, so yeah, the Waitrose on the Holloway Road, they use the sort of bit between the car park and the shop. Not that I've ever shopped in Waitrose, of course. Farmers markets all the way, and they've got the tunnel bit where you to push your trolley through, and in there is where they have a lot of plants, seasonal plants. And first of all, I worry that people plant out their bedding too early, because people sell bedding early, and you can have a late frost. Come on, you can have a late frost up until the end of May,
can.
and it's going to kill it all off, and then you have to buy it all over again. So that is rule one. Don't start buying bedding and planting it out until the fear of frost is over.
Ne'er cast a clout till the May is out. That's what it is. So that's about when the May tree comes in. And there's something on Scribehound that Leah Lindertz was writing about
right.
the ice saints the
Yes,
other day.
listening to it on the way here.
Go and listen to that. So you'll find out from that. So first thing is don't plant things out too early. But they don't just sell bedding plants in Sainsbury's. No. They have shrubs. What tends to happen with supermarket planting is that they tend to have the stuff that looks good.
Hang on, the supermarket planting. You're making it out like the supermarket car park.
No.
That's different.
No, this is on the sales bench.
Exactly.
So they're maybe selling stuff that's flowering at the moment. It's looking good because they want to lure you in.
Yeah.
And say, hey, come and buy me. So I think the important thing is not about. I think all the plants are going to be good.
They're going to be fine plants. They're from the same nurseries that a lot of the garden centres buy from. Big nurseries. A lot of them are UK grown. A lot of them are grown in Belgium and Holland and stuff. Come over here, and they're good quality nursery plants. So I wouldn't worry about that at all.
Is look at them, make sure they're not damaged, and when you get them home, stick them in some water, and then plant them. And there's absolutely no reason at all why Sally from Scunthorpe shouldn't have a garden that is thriving and delightful.
Yeah, but don't mix it up with the rest of your shopping from Sainsbury's. Like, don't start chucking pesto in. No,
Pesto makes good compost.
Yeah, well,
be fine. What have you got on your card?
Everything makes good compost eventually.
We all make good compost.
I need the specs on for this. Okay, Nina from West Byfleet. That's out in Essex. Good little fishing spot near there. I'm not going to tell you where it is though. We've developed a bird's garden at a care home. What plants would you suggest that need very little water? It's quite a trek to the water supply. And please don't suggest we move the tap. Too expensive. Okay, so teasels are, they're seen as a weed, but they're absolutely lovely things, I think. In fact, I want to encourage more teasels. They're a wildflower. They've got a strong stem, and, their seed heads sort of look like a microphone.
Yeah.
I think but they hold water.
Yes.
So for a start, they have the seeds that, finches and stuff come and feed on, which is a great plant. They don't need watering really because they're pretty drought tolerant and they're a weed. But they also hold water as well, so birds come and drink from them. Yes. So you're nodding. I'm
nodding. I like teasel. Teasel
is
a lovely thing. It's actually a really good sculptural plant. I have a client who there's teasels in their garden, and they send me photographs every week of the teasel, going through the season. And that same teasel has been there probably for 12 months now. It's stood upright. The other thing that teasels do is quite sweet, is that when it rains, the seeds that are left in the seed pod, on the seed head, that haven't been taken by the finches, sometimes germinate. You get little green sort of fuzz around the bottom of it. So
but it's also the leaves. They also hold water in the leaves.
Yeah, well, it's where it joins the stem. It makes a little sort of drinking.
I've realised that actually Nina wasn't really asking about plants for birds, but I did a double whammy there because it was more. I think it was more that they need water. They've got very little water, so it's like dry planting. Okay, this is going to turn. This is like we are turning into some sort of agony uncles.
We don't really want to do that, do we?
No, we've got to be careful that we don't start offering too much advice.
Not too much advice, but it's fine. I think it's a nice, slightly quirky thing. I like the idea of the fact that she's doing a garden for birds in a care home, because that's nice. It's something for the residents to look at as it's going on, so that sort of works well. I like the idea that she's doing let's fill up the bird feeders with peanuts and stuff. Is actually get the plants that will actually provide the seeds for the birds is a really nice idea. Actually, that one too. But drought-tolerant plants. Yeah. Do you know what happens when people ask me questions like this?
Yeah.
Every single thing I've ever known goes straight out of my head.
Oh, there's loads of plants.
I can't remember.
All the Mediterranean stuff. There's lavenders, there's rosemary, grevilleas, Erigeron, little Mexican fleabane, all that stuff is iris, Iris germanica, they all. But now we're turning into.
Yeah, now we're going to stop.
I think please don't suggest we move the tap. Too expensive. Well, let's suggest we move the tap.
We can move the tap. Or
we'll have a whip round.
We could put a hose pipe on the tap.
Yes, a hose
bring
pipe.
It all the way across that way.
Yeah, well, good though.
Okay, I've got a question now. You ready?
Yeah.
Brandon in Devon. I've spent years nurturing a lemon tree, and it's finally produced one lemon.
Yeah.
My in-laws are coming over this weekend. I want to impress them. How should I best use it to showcase its and my zest?
Oh,
You know, the best thing to do is go to Sainsbury's where Sally is, buy some lemons and wire them onto the tree. So it looks as if you've got more than one lemon.
that's a good idea.
That's one way to do it. But, okay, I mean, does he want cookery advice? How are you going to use the lemon?
I think you can multi-use this lemon, right? I think for a start, you got a G&T, okay? So you got a couple of slices, you know, for your G&Ts. You know, oh, look, I've got a G&T with my own lemon. That's quite flash.
That is quite flash.
That's quite flash. And then, I mean, for me, it's either a lemon tart or a lemon meringue pie. Because,
You're not going to get, it's one lemon.
Yeah.
One lemon. We don't even know how big it is. It could be a mini lemon.
well, maybe Brandon should just make one for himself, right? Make G&T for everyone, a little mini lemon meringue pie and say, oh, if only we had more lemons, you could have had one of these as well.
It's his in-laws. I don't think that's a good idea. That's a bad thing to do. So, but I agree with you. I think the best thing to do, if you have one lemon, it needs to be a performance, doesn't it, really? The lemon needs to arrive...
Like the pineapple in the old days.
Precisely.
Yeah.
If the lemon arrives with a fanfare, maybe with somebody in a special hat carrying it,
Yeah.
they bring it out, it's cut up with a beautiful sharp knife, and it's a little squeezy and a little zest on the edge of it, and this is the perfect gin and tonic.
Yeah.
So that's what he's going to do. So that's a performative lemon. What else you got?
I've got Georgie from Hampshire, who says, if you're a plant, what would you be and why?
Oh, God, what sort of plant would I be?
I know what plant I'd be.
You'd be, okay, I'm going to guess what sort of plant you'd be, all right? You're going to
No,
be...
you can't guess what
Yes, I can.
They're not.
I'm
It's
gonna
asking
guess.
you to guess what plant
I'm
I
going
am.
to guess you're going to be red and white.
No,
yeah,
no,
you're
that's
going
blood
to be
and
a
bandages,
little bit
isn't it?
fishy.
You're talking about all my hobbies. That's not.
And you're going to be golfy in some sort of way. You're going to have little white ball shape. No, not going to work that one.
No, I always thought that I would be a box. You know, like a box.
What, covered in caterpillars?
Well, that's the problem with box these days. Is it used to be a good thing to be because I always thought of myself as sort of solid. You know, sort of very useful. But at the same time, needs a good clipping every now and then.
I think that's good, but again, it's not really. Maybe you could be a U instead, which would do the same things.
Oh, U's a bit. I don't want to be a U. I don't want to be you.
What would you like to be?
Yeah, something. I still a sort of stalwart of the garden.
I think I want to be something flashier than that.
Yeah, you would. You would.
Although I am a remarkably unflashy person generally, I would like a little bit of da-da to the whole thing. I would like to be, I want to be something quite groovy.
Groovy.
Something quite interesting, something a little bit unusual. I don't want to be a lavender because it's just a bit predictable.
Well, that's just as well.
I don't really want to be a hydrangea because
No.
again, it's a little bit sort of.
You would be something a bit more unusual.
I think I probably do.
Do you want to be your Mollipospermum peloponnesiacum?
Oh, the old Mollipospermum
Do you want to be? Well, I mean, you've got a name that no one can really pronounce anyway. James Alexander-Sinclair. It takes a while. It takes a bit of practice.
I could
so
be that.
we may as well have a plant name that no one really can remember.
I could be. Do you know the first plant name I ever learned? What was the first plant name, Latin plant name you ever learned?
I think it was Acer palmatum dissectum atrapurpureum.
See, that's quite good, isn't
Because
it?
I planted one, and I thought if I can learn this, I'm on my way.
You know, people will look at you with seriousness. I found a plant in a park in Acton, and I thought, oh God, that's exciting. I thought this is a really unusual and interesting plant. And I did a lot of research, and you didn't have the internet in those days, so I had to go and look in the Reader's Digest book of plants and work out what it was. And the plant was Symphoricarpus livigatus alba, which is basically one of the worst shrubby weeds you could get. It's a snowberry.
It's the snowberry,
It's
the little
horrible.
white berries. We
Yeah.
had one in my garden when I was a kid, actually.
Yeah.
Those little white snowberries.
That's the thing, but I thought, okay, that's a really
I think
good
they're coming
name.
back into fashion.
I do hope not, because they're a pain.
I think you might be one of those.
I'm going to be. No, I don't want to be one of those. I don't want to
I
be a
think
pain.
you're a
I don't want to be
snowberry.
a weed. I want to be something more interesting than that.
Snowberry's not a weed.
Yes, it is.
Is it?
Yes, it just grows in hedges and gets in the way, and it's
I
it's
plant them
got very
everywhere.
it's got very little to recommend it. But except for the fact it's got this quite cool Latin name that I like.
I think it might be a
But
dahlia. I think you could. Oh, there is a dahlia, Joe Swift. I think
There is.
I think I'm obsolete now, to be honest with you.
It had a dark. I know it. It had a little dark leaf to it, and
Yeah,
it was like a
it was
white
like
flower,
Twinings.
wasn't
It was like the Twinings lot. Yeah, the dark leaf, and it had a sort of lovely big flower with a little pink sort of
It must
wave
still
to
be-
it.
it's still be
It was
somewhere.
single and open.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's you, isn't it? Really.
Well, no, because I'm married and I'm actually
And closed.
quite closed in some respects.
Okay, I've got to think of a plant because
I think you could be a dahlia though.
I wouldn't mind being a
You'd
dahlia.
like to. You'd be a good dahlia.
I think I would be quite a nice dahlia. I don't want to be. I want to be quite a wispy dahlia.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a chunky dahlia. I don't want to be like one of those ones that got the
You'd never
flower
be
the same
chunky.
size as your head. I'd maybe be a murky, so it's like a species dahlia, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, or possibly a Mexican star.
Oh, yeah, they're
what
nice.
I was thinking is like what I would quite like to be is I would quite like to be a sanguisulba.
Okay.
Do you think it's like
Yeah.
sort of? I said so. I'm not terribly tall, so maybe it doesn't quite work with that. But generally, sort of wispy and interesting, and people say, "Oh, wonder what that is." So that's that one. Okay, have we got any more questions? Or are we out of questions?
I'm out of questions. I've done my 2 questions.
Okay, so we've done that. So that's sort of pretty much us for this time,
Yeah.
isn't it? Really. So we've covered a certain amount of stuff, and so this is basically what we're about is about talking about gardening stuff, but without getting too educational.
I thought we got a bit too educational on that one. I felt like, suddenly there was all this stuff kicking in from, editors and directors. Oh, yes, but what's the take-home value? What's the take-home value? Yes, but those 3-acre garden you're talking about, can you do it in a window box in Hackney? And that's what people ask you when you're making sort of gardening TV sometimes.
Okay, well,
and often the answer is no.
Okay, well, that's a very good answer. We'll say no. We say no to things like that because what we're going to try and do is steer clear of the education and go off in a different direction. So next week, we're going to be talking about trees.
Oh, I love cheese. What? What? Italian cheese?
All sorts of cheese. Trees, Joseph.
Oh,
trees. We're going to be talking about trees.
Trees are
those
green.
stalwarts of the forest.
Yes.
And those things that we need in our gardens
Love
to keep
trees.
everything going. So we're going to be talking about trees. In the meantime, if you would like more of this kind of stuff, not necessarily just Joe and I, but 30 other people, then you should go and subscribe forthwith and immediately to Scribehound Gardening. There is details of which the links to follow in the show notes. And there you will have 30 other writers. Every day something drops into your window box. Who do you look forward to reading or listening to every month? Give me
Ben
one.
Dark.
Ben
I
Dark.
like Ben. I like listening to you. I like listening to Leah. I like listening to Sarah. I like listening to everybody. There's a
That's
really good
lovely.
mix.
And Titchmarsh, Grace Alexander, all of these glorious, glorious people. So go and subscribe to that, which means that will keep you going in the time between these podcasts.
And also keep sending in your questions because you could win one of these and become a Scribehound legend.
That's what we want.
Yeah, you could win one. Not this one, obviously, because this is the rude one. But yeah, that's what we like. And so send your emails into gardening@scribehound.com. Did I get that right?
You
Oh,
did.
that's the first time.